So
Thank
let
you,
me
sir.
just introduce this session, and Radhika, Professor Radhika Tandon can take over this session. And very nice to be in this group of people discussing high-profile corneal surgeries. And we all know corneal surgery is the option for removing the blindness which can be corrected by surgery in cornea, keratoplasty. And we are coming out of the pandemic, slowdown of a keratoplasty area. Let's hope we have rejuvenation of entire surgical aspect of a cornea. So I think we can take the session now, and I'll request Dr. Radhika to take over.
Okay, thank you, sir. Good morning, everybody. So we can go ahead with the session. As a corollary to the previous session, we're going to this part on keratoplasty. And as you see that there are so many corneal disorders which cannot be medically treated, and you have to resort to keratoplasty. And for keratoplasty, we need a very robust eye banking system, and we require good quality corneas. Before I start, I'd like to firstly congratulate Maharashtra Ophthalmic Society for putting together a wonderful program and for being kind enough to invite me. Thank you for the opportunity. Now, I'm going to cover the topic in a very sort of a quick way because it's very exhaustive to cover in 8 minutes, and just giving you a little bit about advances in terms of the, what should be the approach to the patient and what should be the decision making, and then the surgical approach, and then what information we need to give to the eye bank. With so many stalwarts here on this platform, I'd like to take this opportunity and encourage everybody to think in numbers, because we always have this very broad figure, and that figure never reaches. We never reach our goal 2020. We were supposed to take care of that blindness, and that's impossible. So I'd encourage every corneal surgeon, whichever eye bank you're working with, at least take care of the local information you have. So whatever lists you have locally, it just is a small ecosystem. You put a target that there'll be no person waiting for keratoplasty in, say, your city or your state, and so on. So if you work with numbers and then you combine your resources, so all the eye banks and all the corneal transplant surgeons know that there are so many patients waiting here and there's so many surplus tissues there, then you can work in that way. So technically there are all these numbers, but they're all useless because nobody is following anything. But practically, if each and honestly, I feel it's only the corneal surgeons who can solve this problem. So it is the corneal surgeons who have to work closely with the eye banks and effectively, take care of the waiting lists and share your information with the eye banks. As far as decision making, now in India, our decision making, unfortunately, is again hindered or hampered by lack of tissues. Now, some people are not facing this problem, and a lot of people are facing this problem. So it just goes to show how much of inequality there is in the country in terms of resources. And the reason why this is happening is because often patients are not treated, as Merle said, that their infection, and even Somshila, their infectious keratitis is not treated properly at the right point of time, and then you end up requiring a keratoplasty when actually the lesion could have healed up pretty well without requiring a surgical intervention. And in our teaching and our all our general workshops, and it's very important that every ophthalmologist should have a basic knowledge of handling cornea, because not possible to have a corneal surgeon available in every corner. So this is again meetings like this, Maharashtra Ophthalmic Society, Delhi Ophthalmic Society, and all over the country. It's important to encourage all ophthalmologists to be comfortable with the first point of care for not only corneal infections, but also people who come with a complication for following a graft, such as, say, a broken suture, a loose suture, or graft rejection. So this is the therapy, and then we have a whole lot of infections and which are common and associated morbidities such as glaucoma and lid abnormalities. So we need to get our other colleagues also on board. Now, just to share a little bit, when we're talking about advances, and I said our advances are limited because we don't have that many resources.
Specification with some form of allograft corneal transplantation. Even we would, except that when faced with extreme shortage of corneal tissue, we resort to salvage vision in such cases with techniques that help us to avoid the use of allograft corneas, and in the same breath, protect the patients from the undesirable effects of an allograft transplant. Partial corneal opacification may be limited in terms of area or depth. Starting with the cases of partial corneal opacification limited to a particular area, the non-allograft surgical options are optical iridectomy, rotational autokeratoplasty, or a contralateral autokeratoplasty. Use of an automated vitrector allows the surgeon to precisely design the pupil according to the clear area of the cornea available. Although improvement in visual acuity is moderate, it is rapid, and the patient is rehabilitated quickly. If the corneal opacity is central but has spared 4 to 5 millimeters of cornea superiorly, rotational autokeratoplasty is a viable surgical option. Computer simulation is used to select cases for this surgery and to also provide surgical guidelines. Mutations to decide the suitability for an autorotational graft, corneal opacity away from the pupillary axis. This child, for example, has 20/30 vision at 3 years of follow-up. We set out on a long journey to switch corneas of the two eyes. Set aside. Back to the host eye. The diseased cornea, and for one final time, we move to the donor eye and secure the diseased cornea. If the opacities are deeper but smaller area-wise, RGP lenses can provide very good visual acuity to such patients. They act by neutralizing the irregular astigmatism anterior stromal corneal opacities and providing a smooth anterior refractive surface to the eye.
So that was a quick overview about other options that we have. And of course, as I said, our decision making is often limited by the availability of the tissues and also sometimes what is in the best interest of the patient. And of course, in terms of keratoplasty, we have now moved to lamellar surgeries, anterior or EKs, because they have much better results. And then you can use one cornea for more than one patient. So there's a whole host of options available. And intraoperative OCT guided corneal surgeries again helps to give you better results. We have various clinical scenarios and practical tips and clinical implications, which I'll quickly tell you. The benefit of the IOCT is to give you high-speed non-contact medical imaging technology, which in vivo gives you tomographic imaging, and real time during the surgery you can see the level or the depth to which you are operating. As you can see, you choose the area that you want to scan and appropriately discuss your plan and prepare your donor tissue accordingly. So discovery is seeing what everybody else has seen and thinking what nobody else has thought. I wanted to share some out-of-the-box thinking that is sometimes required in our clinical case management. And as you very well know, that one will decide the surgery anterior posterior depending upon which particular layer of the cornea is involved. And the benefit of anterior lamellar keratoplasty is that a lot of non-optical grade tissues can be used. And here again, I'd like to say that during the pandemic, we had to use glycerol preserved corneas for a lot of cases, and they were very successfully used for anterior lamellar keratoplasty. So traditionally, we used to always hear about 30 to 40,000 corneas being discarded all over the country every year. So I would encourage eye banks not to do that in future and to transfer the corneas to glycerol and then find any appropriate surgical team which can use it. Once the cornea is in glycerol, it can be kept for a year, it can be used for anterior and tectonic surgeries, and it can be distributed to places where there is a shortage of tissues. The rest of the points will be covered in the later surgeries on DMEC and DSEC, but just to give you one example of superficial opacities, here you have a patient of a nebular macular corneal opacity, which was anterior. And so an ALTK was done. So these are, of course, expensive equipment, but it's not necessary that you use these high-tech machines. If one has them, it makes the surgery simpler, more precise, with a smoother interface, but you can get excellent results by manual dissection. And in India, we are very fortunate that there are many companies which have come up with guarded blades and very good Indian modifications of instruments. And instead, one can use all these instruments to get a guarded entry and do a lamellar surgery. So, and the interest of time, I would just wanted to give you a little snapshot of this kind of surgery. And often when you do a surgery anteriorly less than 200 microns in depth, one can do glue assisted. So it is sutureless. You apply fibrin glue to the bed, and this is if the tissue is less than 200 micron thick, and then you let the cornea stabilize and then put a bandage contact lens. Be aware that this does not give excellent vision straight away, because it does not take care of the astigmatism, because after all, the donor and the recipient beds are not perfectly aligned as you have with LASIK. But as long as you and the patient understand that, and the aim is to get better vision. So if you have a patient who had particular visual potential and regains that after around 2 to 3 weeks time, as you can see in this case, I think your job is done and you have achieved what you required. And over time, the cornea molds very well and the patient is very satisfied. So I think I can quickly go over the next few slides, which show different formats of patients who can be benefited by this. We can have Salzmann nodular degeneration. We can have anterior keratitis. This is an example where the host bed is not being dissected with the microkeratome. It is being manually dissected. And you have to be careful to make sure that you do a guarded entry, use the crescent blade, and do a smooth dissection. And then, of course, we have the one can use the Hesburg Baron vacuum trephine to have a controlled entry where you decide precisely how many microns deep you are going to cut with the blade. And then we have DALK surgery. IOCT guided this particular patient. There was actually a perforation, and so an air bubble has been put, and you will see that there is actually a break. It just shows right here.
Dr. Radhika, ma'am, sorry to interrupt. We are really running short of time.
Okay. So
Yes,
just to finish here,
if you can summarize.
See that there is a break, and that has been sealed with glue, and then the surgery has been completed as a successful DALK. So in a nutshell, I'd say that there are several advances in keratoplasty, and eye banking has to step up to the fore, and we must get the eye bank people more engaged in making sure they do not waste transplantable corneas. Often they feel it is not suitable for surgery, but it is the surgeon's responsibility to educate them that these tissues should not be discarded, and every effort should be made that the gift of sight is honored and taken to its clinical conclusion. Thank you so much for patiently.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Dr. Radhika, for the wonderful session. And moving on to the next session and next topic, I am myself Dr. Rohit Bang, and I'm here to discuss about DMEK, or Descemet's membrane endothelial keratoplasty. We already have the, am I audible, Sumit?
Yes, sir, you're audible.
Yes, sir. So I am thankful to the organizers, especially Dr. Ragini Parekh madam, Sumit, who had been seeing all those formalities or all those getting things right in place. So coming straight forward to the DMEK, or Descemet's membrane endothelial keratoplasty, we have our teachers over here, Dr. Rajesh Fogla, from whom I had learned the nitty-gritties and still learning. So we all know. Coming to the DMEK as such, how we can learn, it should be in a form of a pre-op evaluation, appropriate case selection, donor preparation, DMEK roll loading in a cartridge, and obviously graft insertion and correct orientation. Now, first and foremost, coming to the point, why DMEK, or why we had been seeing excellent results with a penetrating keratoplasty, although it leads to a long visual rehabilitation. Then came a DLEG, then came a DSEK, then came an automated DSEK, and finally we are seeing a finest results with the DMEK. So it is a transplantation of isolated endothelium and Descemet's. So it reduces or nullifies the interface haze. There is minimal or no induced hyperopia. There is a less chance of graft dislocation because graft itself is very thin. and a shorter visual rehabilitation. And very important point is no costly instrumentation as compared to automated DSEK. So the flip side is it all obviously involves lots of challenges in every step, and there is a steep learning curve that we see. So indications, the simpler indications would be endothelial dystrophies in a form of a Fuchs endothelial dystrophy or postomyelofibrosis dystrophy. Bullous keratopathy, the most easier one would be a pseudophakic bullous keratopathy, where we have a PCIL to support our air bubble, and endothelial decompensation, which could be post-traumatic, post-glaucoma shunts on tubes. In a later cases or a difficult cases, you can choose your ICE syndrome patients, and obviously failed previous PK or a DSEK or a failed DMAC as such. Very important is pre-op evaluation. So the patient selection should be very judicious, and at the same time, the donor evaluation has to be very well done. The patient selection, you need to assess the difficulty of the case by doing a proper ASOCT. You need to determine the corneal clarity. Should rule out there is no obvious lot of stromal scarring. The anterior chamber complexity should be looked for. In the initial cases, you should have a very good anterior chamber as such. So you have a good bubble management. And obviously, you need to determine whether you are going to combine it with a cataract surgery or any sort of a IL exchange. So the ideal cases to start with would be a Fuchs corneal endothelial dystrophy or a pseudophakic bullous keratopathy, which has a normal anterior segment structures and a good iris lens diaphragm that you can see. And a tougher cases can be picked up later with a more experience. Coming to donor selection, as in a case of a DSEK, we obviously used to ask our technician who's going for a eye donation to keep a rim of at least around 2 or more than that, 2 millimeter or more of a scleral rim. In a DMAC, one advantage is rim size is little unimportant. The older donor is better. What I mean by that is the ideal donor would be somewhere in a range of 45 to 70 years, so that your peeling would be easier. The patient, if it's phakic, is a better, as endothelial cell count would be better in such cases, and a similar peel time or a problems of a met cornea, met donor. What I mean is, if you have a OD of a donor which has some issues, you should expect that you would have similar issues with a OS or the other eye of a same donor. So this is a DMAC roll in a container that we need to pick up. So coming to the donor preparation as such, you need to judiciously select your donor and place the endothelial side upon the Teflon block with a partial trephination of 10 mm. Just mark as such, score the DM or a Descemet's membrane 360 degree and remove any peripheral attachments or tags, and peel it on a one side. Punch with a 3 mm trefine and flip it. So mark the stromal side, punch with the desired diameter and stain with a trypan blue. This is a small video that is running through. You can see a 3 mm dermal punch that you use. You flip it over the other side and you mark it with a S or F, so that you know the orientation of the graft once it is inside the anterior chamber. So once you have a good DMAC roll, that you can shift it into a BSS or into your Conisol, and then to be picked up with a injector. So very important is, again, choose the simpler cases to in the initial phase, so that you don't lose your confidence. You don't feel that your patients are screwing you or something because you're not getting the optimal results. This is a small video of the entire case, which is obviously edited, where I had made the initial refining mark with a 9.5 or 10 mm, and with a reverse Sinskey, I'm trying to peel the donor graft. At times, I'm using a blunt suture tying forceps. I'll just run through a little bit. So once the half the peeling is done or 50% peeling is done, I begin my peeling from the other end. I'm just running this edited video too, because we are short of time. And once that is done, I'm making opening a window of 3 mm with a dermal punch, removing the peripheral tags, then taking an appropriate size DM. And this graft is then put up in a solution. Moving on to the patient's eye, there is a small pterygium which I am trying to remove. The initial steps are something like your DSEK, where you are scoring the DM or the deceased DM. So once that is done, now I'm coming to the doing a PI, thorough visco wash, and then loading the Desmats into a cartridge. So once that is done, you just go through the 2.8 mm incision and put the graft and immediately close the wound with a single suture. So once that is done, then you can slowly unroll your graft inside the anterior chamber. With a few gush of a saline, with the tapping over the anterior surface of the cornea, and this is putting up the air bubble and a bandage contact lens. So as it appears simpler in the with the experienced surgeons or with the Fogler's case, at times you have a lot of complications or a learning curve. This was a small 20 seconds video where the graft suddenly rushes. This was a dilated pupil, pseudophakic villous keratopathy, and you can see that the graft, I managed to put it inside the sulcus, and since then I was unable to unroll it. I had to remove the graft and move on to a DSEK. So the advantage is obviously, as you can see in a DSEK, in a ASOCT, in a case of a DSEK, although it used to give a very good results, there used to be a little bit of an interface haze. And in a case of DMAC, you won't be able to see that. That is the beauty of a DMAC. Thank you.
Thank you, Rohit sir. That was sharp on time. We'll move on to the next talk. Just a minute.
We have Dr. Fogler sir with
talk.
us.
Yeah. Numeric team, can you please play Fogler sir's video?
Yes, doctor.
Yeah.
Can I play it right away or?
Yeah.
Right now. Yeah, Fogler sir is already here. Good morning,
Okay,
sir.
doctor. Okay, doctor. Will do.
Fogler sir.
Yes. You can play the video, man. Rohit sir, any questions for sir meanwhile? Till they are setting up the video.
Sir, are you here? Hello.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Morning, sir.
Morning.
Morning, sir. For all the participants, whatever I had learned, or practically everyone, most of us have learned. Those are the tips and tricks from Fogler sir, and we are still learning. Sir, I would till she runs or something, I would ask you or your tips regarding the last video what I was playing.
Yeah, I think whatever points you have covered, those are all the valid points. DMAC is actually not a very difficult surgery to perform, but yes, there is a learning curve to it. And once you get the hang of the technique, it's kind of relatively easy to perform. If they're having any problems playing the video there, I can play it from my end. Just
Leonard, technical team, any issue in playing the video? Why it is not getting played?
Sir, Arif sir, you can put it from your end. We'll ask this technical team to keep things on hang.
Yeah, and sir, I think that would be better. They're not responding also. Technical team, can you let me know what is the issue? Technical team.
Yes, doctor. We just play the video now. Is it visible?
No, not at all.
You are sharing the wrong screen.
You're just showing that there is a folder. The video is not open. You need to double click and start playing.
Okay, we'll just play now, doctor. Few minutes.
In this presentation, I've tried to touch upon all the tips and tricks that you have, which you can, further help improve your
Regarding the loading of the DMAC tissue as such, I guess like myself personally, as well as a lot of my colleagues who are in those learning phase, I'd be happy if you can throw light on that.
Can I play the presentation from my
Yes,
end?
sir.
Because
That would
Yes,
be
sir. Yes, sir.
better, I suppose. I'm sorry for that.
Okay, I'll just share screen from my side, but I need permission. They are not.
Yeah.
The other person is sharing. They have to stop sharing.
Yeah, technical team, if it is not happening from your side,
Is
Fogla
it
sir is
visible,
ready to
doctor?
play.
I'm sorry
It
to
is
interrupt. Is
visible,
it
but
visible, doctor?
it is visible, ma'am, but you are not playing the video. Only folder is seen. You need to play the video. If you are not, then at least allow Fogla sir to share the screen so he can start his presentation.
No. Actually, the video is playing over here, doctor.
No, video is not
you
getting
have to unshare and then you have to play the video and then share the video. You have shared the wrong. You are basically sharing the folder.
Yeah, so it would be better, ma'am, if you stop sharing and allow Fogla sir to share. You already
Okay,
taken
doctor.
effort.
Thank you.
So please don't do it. Yeah. Sir, over to you.
Good morning, everybody. I shall be talking about tips and tricks in descemet membrane endothelial keratoplasty. I have no financial interest to disclose. DMEK is currently the preferred technique of endothelial keratoplasty among corneal surgeons worldwide. It is minimally invasive, allows faster visual recovery with greater percentage of patients achieving 20/20. It induces minimal refractive shift, and it is associated with a reduced risk of endothelial rejection. In the learning curve of DMEK, the most common barriers are the anxiety related to incorrect insertion of the donor tissue and failure of surgery, along with the anxiety related to donor tissue preparation. These are the various steps of DMEK surgery, which I will be covering in this presentation. An ideal case for DMEK should provide adequate visibility through the cornea intraoperatively, should have a normal anterior segment, no large iris defect, the lens iris barrier should be intact, and one should avoid performing DMEK surgery in eyes which have had prior glaucoma surgery, such as trabeculectomy or filtering tubes, or in eyes which have undergone vitrectomy, which have a deep anterior chamber or a unicameral eye. The donor tissue can either be pre-prepared by the eye bank in the form of pre-stripped DMEK donor, or the eye bank can even provide you with a patient-ready DMEK donor, where the DMEK donor is pre-stripped, pre-stained, and pre-stamped, pre-loaded in an injector. The surgeon can also prepare the donor tissue either prior to the surgery or during surgery. This is fairly reproducible with about a 98% success rate. Ideal donor age should be within 50 to 70 years. An F or an S stamp can be placed to identify the donor orientation. Trypan glue can be used to stain the donor DM for a duration of 1 to 2 minutes to enhance visualization during the surgery. Tissue loss rate during preparation can vary between 2 to 20% depending on the experience of the surgeon. The loss of donor tissue means cancellation of surgery and an additional financial expense for a second tissue. To overcome this problem, I designed a device which has an illuminated base, and it provides retroillumination during the donor preparation. So as the donor DM is stripped, you can find that it's very easy to visualize the descemet membrane. And this can help identify any radial tear or breaks that occur during this process, and thereby prevent loss of the donor DM. You can use a clear corneal or a scleral incision to insert the donor tissue. You can place 2 or more paracenteses on either side of the main incision. An inferior vertical paracentesis is useful to prepare an inferior surgical iridectomy. Decimet stripping in the host can be performed under cohesive viscoelastic cover or a complete airfill or by connecting an AC maintainer. The area of stripping is usually 1 millimeter larger than the diameter of the donor Decimet membrane. One should avoid creating an irregular inner surface. Studies have shown that with larger area of decimetorexis, the incidence of postoperative DM detachment is lower and there is reduced need for repeat rebubbling. Inferior peripheral iridectomy can be performed to prevent pupillary block associated with a complete airfill. This can be performed either using a vitrector or via an inferior paracentesis. You can perform a surgical iridectomy using scissors. There are various injectors to insert the donor DM, which are made either of glass or of plastic. The ideal configuration of the donor scroll is a double scroll configuration, and this can be achieved by a simple maneuver of agitating the fluid in the wider portion of the glass injector. And as you agitate the fluid, the scroll opens up, and then when it re-scrolls, it can go into a double scroll configuration. The open end of the scroll should be facing upwards, and one should make note of this prior to inserting the donor scroll into the eye. One of the problems associated with donor insertion is a total or partial expulsion of the donor DM, which is associated with an increased pressure in the anterior chamber or a leaky wound, which results in egress of fluid during the donor insertion. To simplify this, we have described a technique wherein we connect the AC maintainer and then insert the tip of the glass cartridge into the eye, orient the scroll facing upwards, and then we stop the flow in the AC maintainer, and then we disconnect the AC maintainer from the IV tubing. So now the AC maintainer acts like an egress point of fluid from the eye, thereby reducing the counter pressure to the donor insertion. As the donor tissue is inserted, it is easily placed in the anterior chamber, maintaining the correct orientation, and then we can secure the main wound and you can unscroll with minimal manipulation. There are various techniques of unfolding the donor scroll. Usually, I like to use 2 cannulas to tap the central or peripheral cornea. The anterior chamber is maintained slightly shallow during this tapping process. If the donor tissue is in a taco fold technique, we can use a short burst of fluid to shift the tissue so that the open end of the scroll is facing upwards, following which we move the tissue to the central part of the anterior chamber where there is adequate space. Once this is achieved, one peripheral edge of the scroll can be stabilized with one of the cannula, and then we can do peripheral tapping to complete the unscrolling process. The other technique would be to stabilize one edge of the DM scroll and then tap centrally, either in a carpet unrolling or a drum roll technique called the Dirisamer maneuver, to complete the unscrolling process. If you have a deep anterior chamber, the unscrolling may be a bit challenging. Of fluid to flip over the graft in a deep anterior chamber, and then you can shallow the chamber and continue with the unscrolling process. If you have a tight scroll which does not unfold, you can use the Fogler cannula, which has 2 side ports and it is closed at the tip. This can be inserted within the tight scroll. So you orient the scroll in the long axis to the paracentesis, then insert the cannula, give a short burst of fluid, which opens up the scroll, and converts into a double scroll configuration, and rest of the unfolding is quite easy. Another technique is a pull-through technique, which is an endothelium in technique, pretty much similar to like what you have been using in DSEC. So here the microforceps grasps donor DM, pulls it into the eye, following which you place a small air bubble within the scroll, and then you can tap the surface to unfold it. This is useful in eyes which have anterior chamber lens, is directed in a clockwise direction, or you can have asymmetric marks of 1 and 2 to help identify the donor orientation. On that, there is no toxic effect on the endothelium, and the rebubbling rate is definitely lower when you use a longer tamponade. However, you have to look at using longer tamponade carefully, especially in eyes which have hydrophilic IOL, because this can be associated with opacification of the IOL, and also the orientation of the peripheral scroll, which can tell you whether your donor DM is in the right orientation or it's in the visual recovery, minimal refractive shift, and reduced rejection rate makes DMEC an ideal procedure. A stepwise approach to learning DMEC along with proper selection of initial cases can make the learning curve easier for corneal surgeons. Thank you. Thank you for your patient hearing. So those were some of the tips related to DMEC, and I'm thankful for MOS for making me part of this session.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, RF, sir. Sumit?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Yeah.
So,
Any questions from your end? Should we move on to the next speaker?
Yes, sir. We because Vikas sir is here and his
Right,
talk is
right,
also on the
right.
similar lines. So we will take all that, and then if anything is unanswered, then we will definitely discuss on that. Technical team, can you please start the video of Dr. Vikas Mittal, sir?
Yes, doctor.
Yeah, please do it. Are you able to play? Good morning, Vikas sir.
Yeah, good morning.
Yes, sir. Meanwhile, they're playing it. My question to both of you will be in the learning phases, like Rohit sir was saying. What could be the ideal case that we should select for DMEC?
Yeah, so as you know, Dr. Fogla was also mentioning, for DMEC, I think the ideal case would be Fuchs. Fuchs, they give very good results, and in the beginning, I think I can explain that, but we should not choose. We should not choose the complicated ones where you need to do an IOL exchange, or you have to do a vitrectomy and avitrectomy, or where you have a very deep AC. So those kind of things I think you can avoid in the beginning. In the beginning, you pick up Fuchs or plain PBKs. Those they do very well.
And sir, many of the times we do see a stromal opacification in such cases. So is it advisable still to go ahead with these cases?
I'm sorry to interrupt, doctor. Are you able? I mean, is the video visible?
No, ma'am, video is not visible. We told you that you need to stop sharing, play the video on your screen, and then start sharing. Then only it will happen. So, sir, in cases of stromal opacity, sometimes we find it difficult that should we go ahead with the endothelial one, or especially with the opacity involving the visual axis. So, what is your take on that, both of you?
Yeah, so that depends. See, if there's a scar, then it's not a good idea to do any kind of endothelial keratoplasty. But if the view is hazy because of the edema, then definitely you can go ahead with endothelial keratoplasty. Here again, if you are choosing between two endothelial keratoplasties and you have better view, then you choose DMEC. But if you are experienced surgeon and the view is only because of the edema, then you can think of doing a DSEC. But you are absolutely right. If there's a scar, sometimes these old long-standing edema, they are
I'm
permanent
sorry to interrupt, doctor. Is it visible now?
No,
You need
ma'am.
to
It is
play
still not. You need to play first and then share the screen. You are sharing the screen and then playing it. That's what causing the problem.
One of the other things that you need to keep in mind when you start with your first case is that, yes, Fuchs dystrophy is a great indication. Sometimes even pseudophakic bullous keratopathy without any IOL problem and an intact iris would be a good case. But I think more important than that is you should have a patient who's understanding and is, if you need to go back and rebubble or you need to go and do a second manipulation, they should be open to that. Because a lot of times you have patients who want a single surgery and they want a good outcome, So if you do a DMEG, be prepared that you can have a donor displacement or a detachment which may require rebubbling. Sometimes there can be a reverse placement. So I think the patient, so how I would look at it is even back in 2003, when I started with doing DLEGs, it was not easy to convince patients, that I'm starting with a new surgery and there can be complications. But if you tell them the advantages as to what the surgery can
Is it
provide,
visible now, doctor?
Yes, it is visible.
Yes, you can
then
play
I
it.
think it's a good, it makes it easier for the surgeon, even if
I'm
there is
sorry
a
to interrupt, doctor. Is the video visible?
Yes, video visible. Let it play, ma'am.
You
Okay.
can start from the beginning.
I'm starting to play, doctor.
Yes, please.
Yes, doctor. Thank you.
Audio is not there.
Can you just play the video also?
The audio is not there. So you might need to increase the
Please
volume.
increase the volume.
So you can stop it and play it again with video, with audio.
Um, technical team, you stop sharing. Vikas sir.
Yes, please.
Yeah, I think they are having some issue playing with
No
on
problem.
their side. I will have a contact. Meanwhile, is it okay if we move on to the next presentation, if you permit?
Yes,
Because I
please.
think there is some issue with I need to talk to them on phone. Meanwhile,
Sure.
we'll move on to Jatin sir's presentation. Jatin sir, you're there?
Yeah, I'm there.
Sir, can you please share the screen? Technical team, can you please stop sharing?
I'm sharing the video.
Yeah. Technical team, please stop the video. Lenit ma'am. Technical team. I need to call them. Yeah. Thank you, technical team. Jatin sir, you can go ahead now. Sorry, Vikas sir, for the glitch.
Yeah. Good morning. I hope the slides are visible.
Yes, sir, they are.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Sumit, for giving this opportunity, and thank you for putting this robust task of having arranged and having solved all these problems with the technical team. So I'll be speaking about the donor tissue preparation in DSEC. Well, there are a lot of surgeons are still in their learning phase of laminar keratoplasty, and pre-dissected tissue is not what something is available to everyone, because only few eye banks in India are still providing pre-tissue or pre-dissected tissues. A lot of surgeons still need to have the tissue being prepared by themselves. So I'll be speaking about the tissue preparation in DSEC surgery and the problems that one can face while having the tissue preparation done. When we have evolved from full thickness keratoplasty to today DMEC, which is the surgery of choice in uncomplicated endothelial dysfunctional cases. However, all said and done, DSEC still holds to be a surgery that is done quite commonly in patients who have complicated endothelial dysfunctions, and also patients with complicated PBKs, and patients who have had failed DMECs. So the main indications are Fuchs endothelial dystrophy, PBKs, your aphakic bullous keratopathy, failed graft, eye syndrome, aniridia patients with endothelial dysfunction, CHED, and patients with birth trauma. Advantages are numerous in terms of maintaining normal topography, a faster wound healing, and most importantly, in today's time, we can use a single cornea for 2 patients, wherein the anterior part is going to be used for an anterior laminar keratoplasty and the posterior for the DSEC or DMEC. So the total tissue selection is what is important. Ideally, for a beginner surgeon, it would be better that they would choose a donor tissue which has got a good endothelial cell count, that is more than 2,500. However, once you gain experience, even a cell count of more than 2,200 cells per millimeter square is good enough. A good scleral rim of at least 2 millimeters all around the limbus is what is important to be chosen. So when you're trying to look at the technique of the surgery, most importantly, it is the preparation that I'll be speaking today about. The preparation of the tissue can be done either at the time of surgery or it can be pre-dissected in the eye bank. The most commonly used techniques for preparation are automated dissection, manual dissection, and femtosecond assisted laser assisted dissection of the donor tissue. Whereas the automated dissection is available only at institutions or with few eye banks, wherein they do a dissection of the donor tissue using a microkeratome and a artificial anterior chamber. The manual dissection is what is most commonly performed by most of the surgeons. And this is a technique that all of us need to master in case we are having a patient who we have not planned a DSEC, or we have a tissue that is available for us and we need to do a DSEC surgery for the patient and we do not have an access to an automated dissection. This is a technique that we really need to sort to while doing the surgery. Femtosecond laser assisted dissection is again that is available at very few places. So what problems can arise when you're trying to do a dissection using a manual technique? So the commonest thing that is there in the learning curve is having to understand the proper depth of the dissection. So you place the tissue on an artificial anterior chamber. I have no financial interest. I use the Barrett's artificial chamber that is available in India by Epsilon, and I use the Katina knives for dissection of the tissue. So what you do is, after having mounted your tissue on the artificial anterior chamber, you will make a partial thickness groove in the periphery, which is around 400 microns depth, following which you will be doing a partial dissection into the cornea. It is important that you maintain this depth throughout the dissection. However, in the beginning cases where you may be scared to do the dissection, you may go very superficial and land up actually having a superficial tear on the cornea. Once you gain a little more experience, you try to be a little more confident while doing these surgeries. And that's when you go a little more over the roof. And that's when you can sometimes even have the cornea being dissected posteriorly. So it is important that you maintain a proper depth and a proper plane while you're trying to do the tissue dissection, and maintain the depth of 400 microns throughout the dissection. In order to do that, what you can do is initial groove, which is made at 400 microns. The initial dissection can be done either using a straight a dissector or a crescent knife, which is a sharp knife. So this is a case where I have started dissecting using a dissector. However, I realized that the dissector is quite blunt and my knife is just not enough. I do not have any other dissecting instrument or dissector. So here I use a crescent knife to do the dissection. So after having made the initial groove, I go ahead with the crescent knife, and using the crescent knife, I enter the same 400 micron plane and go through the dissection the same way as we do the SICS wound dissection. So in the same manner, you can do the dissection. And once you reach halfway through the cornea, you can use your Varna scissors in order to increase the groove and cut through sideways, and then move ahead to the other side and start doing a dissection. So once you reach to half of the cornea and you are no longer be able to move on to the other half of the cornea, you can actually increase your groove and make it a little longer, and then move on to complete your dissection throughout the cornea. So even without having any dissectors, just by using your simple crescent knife, you can do the corneal dissection and use the tissue for desec. So this way you can extend the groove and then move ahead with doing the dissection on the other side of the cornea as well. So then there is another way that you can do the dissection using microkeratome. However, this is not a very foolproof technique for everyone, and this also has its own learning curve. These are my initial cases of wherein I was doing the tissue dissection using a Moria microkeratome system. So once I saw that, I thought that I had dissected the tissue completely, however, it was only an incomplete pass. In those cases, you can again resort back to completing the dissection using a manual technique. However, if you want, you can actually go ahead and do a redo of microkeratome using a little more deeper tissue dissection. So I went ahead and then I had a microkeratome jam, and the tissue dissection was only partial. So in that case, I took a little a deeper knife and went ahead with redoing the dissection, and you can have a dissect tissue. If you are looking at having a thinner tissue, in the initial days we had only 350 or a head that was available to us with the Moria, and now we also have heads that are around 400 and 450 micron depth. So in those cases, we have only 350 and 200 microns depth. So there we would do a double pass of your microkeratome. So after having done your initial pass, you can reorient your tissue and turn it by 90 degrees, and then do the second pass in order to have an ultra thin dissect tissue available for you. So this way you can have an ultra thin dissect tissue available for use for the surgery. So if you're having a smaller rim, a lot of times people may be disheartened that they have a good tissue and that's the only tissue available. What you can do is you can use a rim from another tissue, which is a discarded tissue or in tissue which is of therapeutic use, and then fix it on your artificial anterior chamber and pressurize it. And then you can go ahead with the dissection like what you would normally do. So this way, even a tissue which has got a very little smaller rim on one side can be used in order to do the dissection, and you can utilize most of the tissues this way. So just to summarize, for beginners, do not use and start doing dissection unless you adequately pressurize your artificial anterior chamber. Use a good sized rim. If you want a little deeper dissection, you can remove the epithelium and then make your initial groove. So you have a little thinner dissect tissue available for you. If you want, you can do the orientation mark on the stromal side in your initial cases. However, I have stopped this practice in dissect long back, but for the beginners, this would be a good tip to do so that they don't lose orientation while the tissue is inside the eye. Thank you very much.
Yes, Rohit sir, you're there. Thank you, Jatin sir, for that wonderful presentation covering all aspects of DMEC. We move on